What's going on, Ian, and welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Mav, bringing you back to Maverick Reacts to another session of Maverick Reacts. Today we're going to watch every NFL team's most overrated player in 2024. This video is made by Barry McCockiner, man. NFL season is back. I just watched the Chiefs and the Ravens. What a great game. But we're gonna see who makes it on overrated. I'm gonna see if I agree or not as we go along. So let's go ahead and give it a watch.
Season quickly approaching, I decided to make a video, which I did last year as well, naming every single team's most overrated player right now. Again, it should be obvious.
Warning, I'm a Vikings fan, and knowing him, he'll probably pick Harrison Smith.
Yes, but these are all my opinion, and I tried to back them up with stats as much as possible. Just try to remember that this list is subjective, and I probably have a couple different answers than you do. Without further ado, let's begin. Arizona Cardinals, Kyler Murray.
Thank you.
This is a surprise because I've been critical of Kyler Murray for a long time. A guy who's a first overall pick, supposed to be a game changer. When you're picked first overall, especially at the quarterback position, you're supposed to be a game changer for a franchise. Now, in Kyler's defense, it's not like the Cardinals have had a boatload of talent around him, but I would still say he hasn't lived up to the first overall pick hype. But that hasn't stopped Arizona from giving him a massive contract, and you got a guy who has a career losing record. He's not an elite quarterback the way he should be for somebody where he was drafted, and his name still carries a lot of weight, even though he still hasn't won a playoff game and he has a losing career record. So therefore, he gets my vote for the most overrated player on the Cardinals. Atlanta Falcons, Kyle Pitts. Now, I know this might upset some people because
he didn't say Kirk
had a decent rookie year, but this was a guy who was picked 4th overall and was supposed to be like the next Gronk and the next Kelsey, only even more athletic. And in 3 seasons, he's got 6 touchdown catches. Now, I understand, again, Falcons, with Arthur Smith there, they were run heavy, they focused a lot on the run, and maybe that took away some touchdowns, but I mean, this did 6 touchdown catches in 3 years. Really, when you're supposed to be a guy that reinvents the position, or at the very least, be comparable to some of the all-time greats at the position. This is going to be a very pivotal year for Pitts because he's finally...
I'm not mad at this because he definitely is an underwhelming first round pick. I'll say that. And people think he's gonna get better underneath Kirk. You know what I'm saying? But I think that'll say more about how good Kirk is versus how bad Kyle Pitts is. You know what I'm saying? Because like, you know, Kirk's just kind of just that good to boost up a person's stats. Like, Atlanta has had mediocre at best quarterbacks for the longest now, post Matt Ryan. So
they're going to get a competent quarterback really outside of beyond washed Matt Ryan and Desmond Ridder and whatever. But with Kirk Cousins there, if he still has mediocre numbers, then I think we're going to we're going to know a lot more about Kyle Pitts. But right now, I think he's still overrated. Baltimore Ravens, Ronnie Stanley. Now, a lot of people might say, well, Lamar Jackson's overrated because he's got 2 MVPs and like only 2 playoffs. Hated by some people, but he still is.
Oh, why? Yo, this thing freezing right now. Hold on.
Kyler Murray for a long time, a guy who's a first overall pick, supposed to be a game hated by some people, but he still is one of the best players in the league, so he's not overrated to me. Ronnie Stanley is a guy who's never played a full season. He was first team All-Pro way back in 2019, and he just hasn't lived up to that status. He's had a bunch of injuries since then. He was very, very bad last year in 2023, but his name in terms of around the league still carries, it's held in high esteem, but it's time for him to he's still young enough to where he can have another season where he was dominant and elite at the level that he was in 2019. I'm waiting for it, and it would probably help Lamar too and the rest of the Ravens if he did as well. Buffalo Bills, Von Miller.
I agree with this one.
With this and say, well,
he is a corpse, a shell of his former MVP self, Super Bowl MVP. That is. Hold on.
But I don't think a big enough deal was made out of the fact that Von Miller did not record a sack last season.
No.
0 sacks, and I understand. The year before, he had his ACL injury, came to Buffalo. But Von Miller, again, he's still a big name, and he had no sacks last season. He's one of those guys that he's going to be a Hall of Famer. He's one of those great players that he's kind of washed up before people are ready to admit that he is. And he's washed up. Now, maybe he'll bounce back and have a double-digit sack season this year. I don't know. But he looks, to me, he still has a premier reputation despite the fact that he hasn't produced on the field at an elite level in about a year and a half. Carolina Panthers, Shaq Thompson. I'm pretty sure he's the last player on the...
I don't know if I could say Shaq Thompson. I'll probably say like somebody like Miles Sanders if they didn't get rid of him already. It's between him and Bryce Young because he was the first round first pick. I wouldn't say Shaq Thompson.
Panthers, at least defensively, from that 2015 Super Bowl team when he was a rookie. Once viewed as a foundational defensive player for the team, he's had a couple injuries in recent years. He still has a reputation as one of the better linebackers in the NFL, despite the fact that the numbers show that he kind of struggles in pass coverage, and in this era more than ever before, specifically on short routes, on out routes, things like that. In the past, linebackers didn't really have to be great pass coverage guys, but now in today's era, if you can't cover as a linebacker, it doesn't really matter how much of a thumper you are in the run game. You're going to be exposed, and Shaq Thompson last year, he had only played 2 games, I believe, but he still has had trouble in pass coverage in the past, and to me, I can't say that a guy is a very good linebacker in today's NFL if they can't cover. So Shaq Thompson, he's going to get this nomination. And then we move on to the Chicago Bears and Kevin Byard.
Yeah, I agree.
Third. Now, I can just say this isn't me being butthurt as an Eagles fan. When we traded for him last year, midway through the year, I thought, okay, finally we'll have some help defensively, and he ended up being terrible. I don't know what that's going to go down as one of the worst trades, I feel like, of all time, because we got him for half a year and then he goes to the Bears. But he still has the big name. A lot of these guys, that's the whole point of this list, is a lot of these players that I'm listing have big names. They're still big names, but the production isn't there. And Kevin Byard's one of those guys, you look at his numbers and coverage, you know, he was not very good at all last season. Quarterbacks had passer rating over 102 against him, completed almost 75% of their passes targeted at him. Yeah, that's not going to get it done. Cincinnati Bengals, Orlando Brown Jr. Orlando Brown Jr., he was famous for his terrible, I believe it was Pro Day and Combine.
I'll say this. He was better on the Chiefs than here. I'll say that.
And then he kind of turned it around and was able to win a ring with the Chiefs, and then the Bengals signed him to a massive-ass contract, and last year he was...
And this is what I be talking about when we telling folks, look, if they're on a contract year, expect them to play their best, because once they get their bag, they're going to be started playing like trash.
Pretty bad, at least relative to the massive amount of money he was getting. He was being paid like an elite tackle, and he did not. I mean, he allowed, according to PFF, he had 7 sacks allowed and just a 66.1 grade, which is mediocre. So for a guy who's getting paid that much money to protect Joe Burrow, he's not producing at a level that is worthy of being considered an elite tackle. Even though physically you look at him, he's like 6'8", 360. He has, you know, he's fucking huge. He has the ability physically to dominate anybody he comes up against. He doesn't consistently play like it. Cleveland Browns, Deshaun Watson.
Yes.
The easiest.
Yes, Deshaun Watson. Yes.
Really, again, I've said this in recent.
They paid over $200-something million for this guy, and he's been ass, bro. He's not the same Deshaun Watson that came out of the doggone 2017 draft.
Videos, we haven't seen him play well in a season since 2020, and that was a year where his team finished 4-12. So he took the year off because of all the off-field shit, and then the last 2 seasons he was suspended for 10 games in 2022. Came back, was really bad in 6 games. People said, well, he's just knocking off some of the rust. Then last year he comes back, plays 6 games, gets hurt again, was pretty bad, although he went 5-1. But he has, again, it's kind of like, then they paid him one of the biggest contracts in sports history, and they have all the negative baggage that comes along with him and his off-field shit that he's never going to look down. So really, this is one of those things where even if Watson were to somehow turn it around and go on to win 5 Super Bowls with the Browns, I still think, you know, it wouldn't be worth the contract, because people would still say, well, they signed him despite all the off-field shit that he did. So there's no way for the Browns to win this, even if it goes on. But as it stands,
the Browns are now the new cleanup franchise, because they gave Kareem Hunt another chance after he kicked that woman in the head. So they are officially the cleanup franchise. So if you've been caught doing some egregious shit and trying to get back into the NFL, the Browns are the team you need to call.
Right now, he's been terrible on the field, in addition to the terrible baggage that he brings off the field. Dallas Cowboys, Dexter Lawrence. Some people might have said Trayvon Diggs. Tyron Smith, my choice for the Cowboys last season, is now gone to the Jets.
His name's not Dexter Lawrence. Dexter Lawrence plays on the Giants. The Cowboys the dude on the Cowboys is named DeMarcus Lawrence. Come on, Barry.
Dexter Lawrence is kind of a guy that he hasn't had a double-digit sack season since 2018. He's made the Pro Bowl each of the last 2 years, despite the fact that he has just 10 sacks in that time span. Again, I understand that, especially when it comes to defensive linemen, there's some nuance there, but it seems like he's a bit of a bigger name than he actually is. He seems like a guy, people kind of talk about him like he's a double-digit sack guy every single year when he's not. And I feel like he hasn't produced. I mean, he had 14.5 sacks in 2017. He had 10.5 sacks. Ever since then, he hasn't been in the double-digit sack range. I'd like to see him, or I wouldn't as an Eagles fan, but I feel like in order for him to actually live up to the status as a Pro Bowler, he needs to get more sacks. He needs to be more consistent getting to the quarterback. Denver Broncos, Javonte Williams. This was a guy who was picked high in the second round a couple years ago, 2021.
I mean, sure. I mean, the Broncos don't really have too many big names right now, but sure.
And as a rookie, he had some flashes where you said, wow, what is this guy? The Broncos, and he found themselves a steal, and then he got hurt his sophomore year, and then last year came back and he averaged just 3.6 yards per carry. Didn't look like the same guy that he did as a rookie, or even in his second year before that got cut short. So this is a big bounce back prove a year for Javonte Williams. Maybe Sean Payton will find a way to use him better out of the backfield. I don't know. He averaged just 4.9 yards per catch last season, so if there's a way maybe that they can get the ball downfield to him more out of the backfield, I have no idea. With the rookie quarterback, Bo Nix there, I'm sure they're going to be looking for a lot of easy short throws, so he might bounce back statistically. But as of right now, he's a guy that people have been waiting to see that 2021 form that he showed to come back, and we're still waiting on it. Detroit Lions, Jameson Williams. This is a guy...
Couldn't agree freaking more. Couldn't agree more. This dude is not a reliable number 2 to Amon-Ra, bro.
That he was high first-round pick, and I believe the success that the Lions have had over the last several years has kind of masked how bad of a pick this was. This was a guy, as a receiver, he has 25 catches in 2 years. He doesn't even have 400 career yards yet.
Although, I'm going to admit, though, it was between him and Jared Goff. Because they had him over $200 million too, and like now that Jared Goff is paid insecure, man, he probably gonna mess up somewhere down the line to have a down year.
He has 3 touchdowns. The thing is he'll have a couple long catches, maybe a long catch for a touchdown. He's super fast, but I don't know how anybody can argue with a straight face that he has not lived up to expectations. Like, he has completely fallen short of expectations, but it's kind of been swept under the rug thus far because the Lions have been winning. But if the Lions, let's say, if they have a step back this year and Williams continues to be mediocre, then you're going to get a lot of people start to talk about, wow, this guy really wasn't a great pick. But as of right now, people talk about him like, oh, he's a great deep threat, and I just,
I don't see it.
Especially are very bullish on him, and I don't think they should be. I think he stinks. Green Bay Packers, Christian Watson.
It's between him and Jordan Love. But yeah, man, like everybody was pulling in on him since he got drafted, brother. And then like, if it's not him or Jordan Love, it's definitely gonna be Josh Jacobs. But like, Christian Watson, it definitely is one of the first names to come to mind for Overrated, because like, how often does this guy even see the field? And they're talking about that he's the Green Bay the best option. Dude, if anything, Jaden Reed and Dontavian Wicks look more like threats on the Packers receiving core, not you.
Right from when he was drafted as a project, he has all the measurables, super fast, 6'4", whatever. He showed flashes in his rookie year when he had that 3-touchdown game, I believe, against the Cowboys. So there were signs where you're like, holy crap, this guy, out of all the receivers that Green Bay has, and Green Bay has a good nucleus of young receivers, this is the guy where you look at and say he has the physical tools to be the most dominant, the number 1 receiver. And he hasn't been able to stay healthy. He missed 8 games last year. He's been decent, like he hasn't been horrific. He has 12 touchdown catches in 2 seasons, which isn't bad, but this is a guy that I feel like a lot of people, he's the biggest named receiver, I feel like, of the Packers, and the Packers try to remain kind of anonymous with their receivers, but he's like the biggest name, so he gets the most attention. And I think he's a guy that talent-wise, if he stays healthy, he could be a 1,200-yard, 12, 13 touchdown catch type of guy, but he hasn't been able to do that yet, and until he does, I think people are just going to be continued to be teased by his measurables and his talent, and that makes him overrated to me. Houston Texans, Christian Harris. Again, this is kind of similar to Shaq Thompson, where you can have good tackle numbers, you can be good against the run, but if you struggle in pass coverage as a linebacker in today's NFL, then there's only so much you can do. It's very similar, I believe, like it is.
I would argue with that Hargrave guy. Because he has been getting cooked in coverage, from what I hear, but we can go with this guy.
The NBA, where if you're a traditional center that can't shoot threes, you can have great post moves and you can shoot a high percentage. Like Jahlil Okafor is a great example. But if you can't switch on defense, if you can't spread the floor on offense in today's NBA, you're not going to last very long. So you look at Christian Harris, in both of his 2 seasons, his first few years, quarterbacks have completed over 70% of their passes when targeting him. Quarterbacks last year had a passer rating of 98 when targeting him. So he's a guy, and again, he's not a bad player. He's still young. He can still get better. So not all these choices for the teams are as simple as they look. You know, I think that kind of gets, there's some teams that the choice is obvious. The Houston Texans was kind of difficult to pick one, but I guess if I had, cherry picking, I went with Christian Harris. But he's still young and he still has a chance to improve. I'm not saying he's terrible by any means. Indianapolis Colts, Jonathan Taylor.
They should not have thrown him all that money.
This is more an example of there really wasn't any obvious choice, so I went with one of the big names that's been injured the last couple seasons. He had that amazing 2021 season, first team All-Pro, 18 touchdowns, 1,800 yards. Last 2 seasons,
in actuality, it was between him and Quentin Nelson.
Yards per carry has been down. He's missed about half the season in both of the last 2 years, so he's been injury prone. He still is just 25 years old. We're not talking about a guy who has a bunch of wear and tear on his tires, so he shouldn't be this injury prone. I mean, of course, there's bad luck and shit like that, like Terrell Davis, for example. But, I mean, this is a guy, like, he should be more durable. He should be able to stay durable. But as of right now, he still has a big name because of that amazing year he had a couple years ago. But it's been 2 seasons since he's really produced, like, the All-Pro that he still gets mentioned as, and that's why he's on here. But he still certainly could bounce back. I would not have any surprises. I would not be surprised at all if that happened. The Jacksonville Jaguars, Trevor Lawrence. Every video I make about the Jaguars, it's just keep waiting for Lawrence to make the leap. And people thought, okay, he had a terrible rookie year under Urban Meyer, and he was pretty bad for the first half of his second season once they got Doug Peterson in there, and then he went on a nice run, and the Jaguars had that winning streak, and they won the playoff game. They had the comeback, and then they lost to the Chiefs, and everyone went, oh, here he is. He's arrived. The guy that we've been touting since he was in high school as the next great quarterback, he's finally here, and the coronation was premature. He's still unbelievably inconsistent. He just hasn't taken the next step. And I gotta say this, people say, well, you gotta be patient with young quarterbacks. And I said, well, maybe if this was a couple decades ago, you could be. But in today's NFL, when the rules are geared really towards every offensive player, and the rules are geared for quarterbacks to have every advantage possible, if you're still kind of struggling and still kind of mediocre going into year 4, then chances are that's probably who you are. So Trevor Lawrence, not terrible, but simply hasn't.
If it wasn't Trevor Lawrence, it would be between Brandon Scherf, Mitch Morse, and probably Gabriel Davis. But yeah, if it wasn't him, it was one of those guys.
Come close to living up to the hype that he's had in the career. Kansas City Chiefs, Juwan Taylor. It's always difficult to pick a player from the reigning Super Bowl champion, especially the reigning 2-time Super Bowl champions, to say that they're overrated. I was going to say Kadarius Toney, but I feel like everybody knows that he sucks. So I went with Juwan Taylor, who was one of the worst tackles in the league last year. Had over 20 penalties, which is the worst in the league. His player grade was a terrible 51.6 from PFF. He had 5 sacks allowed. Basically he was like 2015 Peyton Manning, only offensive lineman for him. He was Christian Laettner on the Dream Team. Like, they won in spite of him. So that's why he gets this nomination here. Las Vegas Raiders, Christian Wilkins. Now, this is kind of me projecting a little bit because Christian Wilkins, he played 5 years in Miami.
I would probably argue, I mean, maybe they gave him a bunch of money, but, I mean, this is not a bad choice. I would argue maybe like somebody like I would argue somebody like freaking Gardner Minshew, thinking that and having the fan base think that he's gonna take them to the playoffs. That and Gardner Minshew still leaves more to be desired as a quarterback. We'll go with this.
His first couple years, respectable, not bad at all. Then last year he broke out, had 9 sacks, and really had a very, very good season. And then he get this huge contract from the Raiders. But it's kind of like, all right, well, was this just a 1-year thing, or was this the start of something new? And the Raiders are obviously banking on the fact that this is just the new norm for him, but I'm not so sure about that. So I feel like this is a signing that could very easily, in very short time turn out to be bad, or at least they could say, well, they overpaid Christian Wilkins based off of one good year. I think that's what my gut's telling me. Los Angeles Chargers, Joey Bosa. Joey Bosa is a big name, and some of that has to do with.
Oh, get out of here, dude! You don't like Big Bad Bosa? You don't like Big Bad Bosa? Okay, granted, his sack numbers did falter, but I mean, I guess this is a good choice. I guess. But then again, a lot of names that were overrated left, except for Derwin James. You could easily put Derwin in here. You know what I'm saying? Because he's definitely getting up there in age, bro. Big Bad Bosa is the most overrated Charger? Wow.
The fact that he's his older brother. He's the older brother of Nick Bosa. But it's insane to me that he's been in the league for 8 years now. He's going into his 9th season. He's never made an All-Pro team. He's certainly not a bad player by any means, but he's been injury prone, especially the last 2 years. And he's just a guy. He's considered an elite defensive end, but the production and the consistency just hasn't been there for quite some time. And I mean, who knows? Maybe one of these years he'll finally stay healthy and have like a 15 sack season. But he's definitely been outshined by his younger brother. There's no question about that. And he has a superstar rep, but he's not a superstar in terms of if you just look at the production. Los Angeles Rams, Cooper Kupp. Again, this was a very difficult team for me to.
What? If you ask me, it's Tre'Davious White because he can't stay on the damn field. But whatever.
I still went with Cooper Kupp because with each passing year, and this is somewhat similar to Jonathan Taylor, where Jonathan Taylor had a great 2021. Cooper Kupp had a historic 2021, possibly the best season any receiver's ever had if you include the playoffs. And since then, he's been injury prone, and quite honestly, he was basically replaced by Puka Nacua a little bit. And it's a guy, he's over 30, he's 31. It's kind of, well, is he ever going to get back to the same form that he had as Super Bowl MVP in 2021? I don't know, but he still has that big name as one of the best receivers in the league. I don't know if he is that anymore. We'll have to see. But he's still better than the Miami Dolphins choice, which is Odell Beckham Jr. Odell Beckham Jr., I make a lot of poop jokes at his expense, but I say this.
If it's not him, it's definitely Tua. Yeah, we'll go with Odell.
As somebody, I remember watching him come into the league. He was one of the best players I'd ever seen his first 3 years. He was just different. The way that he moved, the way he got open, he was legitimate. People talk about, he was only famous because of that one-handed catch against the Cowboys. No, this dude for the first 3 years of his career was legitimately a dominant player. And then he got hurt in the preseason in 2017, and it just hasn't been the same since. But he still carries that big name, and you just gotta look at the.
I'll never forget the times where Xavier Rhodes shut him down and he was throwing a damn hissy fit. Anyway, let me stop.
Numbers. I mean, this is a guy that he's not. People say, oh, well, Odell Beckham, he's number 1, number 2. I don't even think he's a number 3 at this point. I mean, he doesn't have the same explosiveness, and he hasn't really for quite some time, especially after his knee injury in the Super Bowl a couple years ago. This guy is nowhere close to the superstar that he was early in his career with the Giants, despite the fact that a lot of people kind of act like he still is, like he still has that in him. I don't think he does. Minnesota Vikings, Byron Murphy Jr. Byron Murphy was.
Okay. You gave Harrison Smith a break. Thank you. But, I mean, I would say he's overrated because the expectations we put on him, he didn't meet those. We expected him to be this elite shutdown corner when, in reality, he struggles being outside. Byron Murphy is only good when he's in the slot. He'll produce when he's in the slot. When he's outside the slot, it's not good for him. He needs safety help every time. So yeah, I mean, there's really isn't too much of a wrong answer. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was gonna be. I knew it was gonna be somebody in the secondary, dude. Shoot. But like, if you ever had to ask me. Byron is definitely one of the top choices. I thought he was going to pick Harry, but Byron is definitely one of the top choices. You know what I'm saying? I love BJ, but he does get cooked a lot for being a number 1 corner.
was supposed to be the big signing for the Vikings going into last season, and it's kind of weird because the Vikings defense was not bad, but it kind of wasn't because of Murphy. Murphy had been coming off of an injury. He played 14 games last year. For his career, he really hasn't had good numbers. He's given up a lot of touchdowns, and he's really not worthy, I think, of the contract that the Vikings gave him. It's pretty much that simple. It's nothing really more to talk about. Sometimes it is that cut and dry, and this is one of those situations. New England Patriots, Ramondre Stevenson. Look, the Patriots, the roster is not very good.
What?
Good, and they're in complete rebuild mode, so there aren't a lot of guys you can really choose that have been there that you can say, okay, this guy's been overrated. But Ramondre Stevenson, I guess, is the choice because he had a very, very good 2022 season where he had over 1,000 yards and average 5 yards a carry. And then last year, that fell all the way down to 4 yards a carry, and he wasn't nearly as good, although he did miss 5 games with injury. Time will tell whether or not 2023 was just a slight blip in the radar or whether it's the new normal. But he gets here because he's one of the few recognizable names the Patriots still have from the last couple years that's still.
I guess. He played the same amount of games he played his rookie year and still didn't get anywhere close to a buck in rushing. So I guess he still can improve though. You know what I'm saying? Because he's still on the right side of 30, but I guess.
There. New Orleans Saints, Alvin Kamara.
I agree with this one.
You look at Kamara's career stats, it's just been a steady decline really every single year in terms of efficiency. And it's kind of sad in a way. He's never...
At least they got rid of Michael Thomas so we don't have to crap on him. But still, screw the Saints.
Never broken 1,000 yards, but he used to be an absolute touchdown monster. You can really actually see the touchdowns completely fell off a cliff once, at least running the ball. Once Drew Brees retired after 2020, over the last 3 seasons, his touchdown numbers have gone way down. He's still a guy you have to respect catching the ball out of the backfield, but his yardage numbers catching the ball, he's not catching 80 passes a season anymore at a very, very good rate. He caught 75 balls last year, but at 6.2 yards per reception, which isn't very good at all. He's never been a great pure runner, but he's still, again, is a guy. He's been there for a while. He made a couple Pro Bowls. You know, he's a guy that he gets a lot of attention. He's one of the recognizable names from the Saints from their past era, from the Sean Payton, Drew Brees era. But he's not what he once was. And he's also due every year to miss at least a couple games, so he does have some durability issues. New York Giants, Brian.
Yes, they overpaid for him.
The Giants signed him.
They overpaid for him.
An elite pass rusher. They got Dexter.
It's between this guy and Daniel Jones.
Lawrence, who's one of the best interior linemen in the league. So they're thinking if we pair Dexter Lawrence with Brian Burns, we could have with Kayvon Thibodeau as well. They could have a good defensive line. I think they overpaid for Brian Burns. His best season was a couple years ago when he had 12.5 sacks. He's a good player, but the Giants are paying him to be like fucking prime DeMarcus Ware or Micah Parsons or TJ Watt and Myles Garrett, and he's not that level. So I think he's getting overrated.
Jets has to be Aaron.
Jets,
Thank you.
Rodgers.
Thank you.
Rodgers hasn't.
He's washed up, man. He probably gonna get hurt again.
Had a good season since 2021 when he last won MVP, and he, not just the Jets, but he might be, along with Mahomes, one of the most popular players in the NFL. And again, he hasn't produced in 2 seasons, and rightfully so for him because he's one of the best quarterbacks of all time. But he's coming off of an Achilles tear, and he is a guy who he has relied on his scrambling and movement before. So it is yet to be seen how he's going to adjust to something like that. It's the Jets, so I'm sure it's not going to end well because that's just how it goes with the Jets. But he's still talked about as an elite quarterback when he hasn't produced like one in a couple years. Basically, I mean, this is a guy that if he has another bad year this year, or if he gets hurt again this year and misses basically most of the season, then it's probably time to retire for Mr. Rodgers. Philadelphia Eagles, Saquon Barkley. This one really hurt me because when Barkley was with the Giants, I used to constantly point out how overrated.
If it's not him, it's Jalen Hurts.
He was, and so when the Eagles
or that Blankenship guy.
I remember saying to myself, oh great, now I have to root for him. And he's a guy like, you look at his numbers, you're like, why is he not better? Because and he had some injuries, you know, but you're like, why is he not better? Now he's certainly, I wouldn't say a bad player, but you know, he averaged under 4 yards per carry in 3 of the last 4 years, and injuries maybe played a role in that. But he's a guy, he's famous for his massive quads and he's supposed to be tough to tackle, but he's not very good at breaking tackles. It's one of those guys where when you really take a deeper look into the numbers, you know, he's not what he was coming out of Penn State. At Penn State, he was an absolute monster. Especially, he had some of the most incredible plays I've ever seen, and he's just not close to being that guy anymore. And the And of course, him going from the Giants to the Eagles, divisional rivalry, a lot of shit talking. There's going to be a lot of, kind of gives him more attention. But I would say he's not one of the better running backs in the league, the way his reputation suggests that it is. I hope I'm wrong, though. Pittsburgh Steelers.
Najee Harris, I agree.
On the Najee Harris.
I agree. He's not that good.
Since he came into the league, I felt like he was a value merchant.
I've seen footage of him running into. Literally, his offensive linemen are making holes for him, and he doesn't hit the holes right and gets tackled.
And he's ran for over 1,000 yards each of his 3 seasons in the league. He made a Pro Bowl, but he averages under 4 yards per attempt for his career. He doesn't really add a lot as a receiver. I mean, he's not a bad receiver, but he's nothing special. And because he was a first-round pick, people always, and Steelers fans, they got on me saying, "You're just a hater, blah, blah, blah." And I was like, well, he's just a guy. Najee Harris is just a guy, and Steelers fans, they wanted him to be special so badly, and because they spent the first-round pick on him, they want him to be so special, but he ended up just being pretty average at best. And so I was right, as I usually am. It's so amazing, isn't that wonderful? San Francisco 49ers, Deebo Samuel.
I would say Brandon Ayuk because he thinks he's worth more than he actually is, but we can go Deebo because of injuries.
Samuel, yeah. He had that 1 year a couple years ago, 2021. Again, that kind of seems like a recurring theme to this video. He was one of the better receivers in the league. And then, for some reason, it just seems like Kyle Shanahan decided to stop using him as a pure receiver and kind of made him into a thick version of Tavon Austin, basically. I mean, you look at the numbers, he averaged 88 yards a game in 2021 receiving. And in each of the last 2 years, he hasn't broken 60 yards per game. So I don't know why. They have so many weapons, obviously. If he was on a worse team, he probably would get more targets than he does. But he still, again, is a very good player, but he's not. He was always one of the best players in the league. I don't think he gets the amount of volume. He doesn't produce the amount of volume I believe that he should. And I don't know. It just that 2021 season just kind of sticks out like a sore thumb to me. Where it was like that was just a massive tease, I guess. Where he looked like he could be one of the better receivers in the league, but now he's just kind of used as a gadget player, which is kind of sad. Seattle Seahawks, Leonard Williams. Really,
I agree with this one.
Where the Seahawks really don't get a lot of hype anymore. Ever since Russell Wilson left, Pete Carroll's gone now. The Legion of Boom days are long gone. So it's kind of hard to find an overrated player. But for this, I went with Leonard Williams because they signed him, they traded for him, and they are expecting him to be one of the better interior defensive linemen in the league. And he's merely just good. He's not great. He's never been dominant, whether it was with the Jets or the Giants. He's had a respectable career, but he's never been dominant interior.
He's definitely been one of the more he's like sub-productive. He's not like massively productive on the D-line, but like he'll still generate pressure, just not like enough to where it scares you every single down.
Of course. And so, but the Seahawks, it feels like
I bet for Washington they're either going to say Jaden Daniels or Austin Eckler or Jonathan Allen or Terry McLaurin, one of those guys.
They're kind of expecting him to be that, and he's not. So he gets overrated here. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Baker Mayfield.
Well, this one was easy because Baker. It's Baker.
I do this because I've been on the Baker Mayfield roller coaster. I was on the Baker Mayfield roller coaster for a long time when people said he sucked, and then I finally got off of it in 2022, and then he came back last year and had a really good year with Tampa. And I said this in the previous video. Every year, it seems like where he's gone in with no expectations, he surprises people and he plays well. But when he goes into a season with expectations, which the Buccaneers have now, because they had a winning, they won the division last year, albeit a very bad division, and Baker played well. They were somewhat close to coming to the championship game. Now the real pressure's on Baker, and he hasn't really responded to preseason expectations in years past with the Browns. So, and the Buccaneers just paid him a shitload of money to be their franchise quarterback. To me, based on history, it seems like this isn't going to go well. And I enjoy Baker. He's a great actor. I love his commercials, but as somebody who was one of the big people on Baker Mayfield Island, based off of history, I don't think it's going to go well this year. He's due to regress. Tennessee Titans, DeAndre Hopkins. Again, the Titans are always irrelevant.
If it's not him, it's Will Levis. Most definitely.
Titans have always been irrelevant, really since Steve McNair was there.
You could also argue Sean Murphy Bunting, but we'll go with this.
Just team that, oh, the Titans, yeah, I forgot they existed. That's kind of what it is. So looking at them, there really aren't any players on their team that are super famous, but DeAndre Hopkins is one of them, and he's still one of the bigger names at the receiver position the league has. And yet, you look at his production over the last 3 years, he hasn't really produced and stayed healthy like a elite receiver since 2020, and he's still considered one of the better receivers in the league, so I guess he gets the nod here. And finally, the Washington Commanders, Austin Eckler. I said this for some reason.
Yes, I agree with this one because this dude stay whining about contracts, man, and how running backs don't get paid enough. Shut up, dude.
Here's watching this guy play with the Chargers that he was a touchdown vulture, and you can see really in 21 and 22 he just fucking vultured so many touchdowns. He's not a great player. He's okay, but his numbers, people look at his touchdown numbers and they say, oh my god, he's an unbelievable player. Look at his receptions. Oh, he's okay. He's not great. He's overrated to me, and this is just something personally that I believe. I just think he's overrated, and I think the Commanders he's not an every down back in my opinion. I just don't think he's that good, or at least as good as a lot of other people do.
Get NFL Sunday Ticket and YouTube.
Okay, I think that's the last team he had. Yeah, that's the last team he had. That's it for this one. If you guys enjoyed the video, man, don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe, hit the notification bell so never ever upload, and I'll see you all in the next reaction video. Until then, take care, y'all. Deuces.